Ever wondered which supermarket coffees to avoid at all costs and the two that are actually worth it? Picture pouring a hot cup first thing in the morning only to taste something bitter, flat, or stale before your day even begins. But a few brews still deliver real comfort in a mug. Which ones make the cut? Let's kick things off with the kitchen staple that promises comfort but too often brews up bitterness: Folgers Classic Roast. For decades, Folgers has been the smell of morning in countless American kitchens. The commercials promised us a warm hug in a cup, a sunrise in your hands, and maybe even a reminder of simpler times when breakfast was eggs, toast, and coffee straight from a red can. And for many, that iconic jingle still plays in their head when they hear the name. But let's be honest, nostalgia only goes so far. Brew up a pot today, and what you often get is a thin, watery coffee with a bitter edge that lingers longer than you would like. It is drinkable in a pinch, sure, but for people who truly love coffee, Folgers Classic Roast feels more like going through the motions than enjoying the ritual. It is not the kind of cup you sip slowly while savoring the aroma. It is the cup you gulp down just to wake up. Part of the issue comes from its mass production. Folgers uses lower quality beans that are roasted in huge batches, which means consistency takes a backseat to volume. That familiar red container may look comforting, but what is inside does not deliver much complexity or depth. The flavor is often flat, with a sharp bitterness that covers up the lack of real richness. For coffee drinkers who have tried fresher, higher quality beans, Folgers ends up tasting like a reminder of what coffee used to settle for rather than what it could be. There's also the problem of freshness. Ground coffee in large plastic tubs tends to lose its flavor quickly once it is opened. If it sits in your pantry for a few weeks, that dull taste only gets worse. By the time you brew it, the once pleasant aroma has faded into something that feels more like cardboard than coffee. That being said, Folgers is not without charm. For many families, it is tied to memories: grandparents sipping it every morning, a pot always ready at family gatherings, or the smell filling the air during Sunday breakfast. It is affordable, familiar, and easy to find, which is why it still dominates supermarket shelves. But when you step back and judge it purely by taste, it is hard to argue that Folgers deserves a place in the best category. Folgers is a classic, yes, but classics do not always age well. For those who just want caffeine quickly and cheaply, it still serves a purpose. But for those who care about the flavor of their morning cup, it is a reminder that sometimes tradition is best left in the past. Do you drink Folgers Classic Roast for the taste, or is it just nostalgia that keeps the red can in your pantry? Sliding into the list is the once famous brand that bragged about being good to the last drop, even when that drop tastes like regret. Maxwell House Original Roast. Maxwell House built its reputation on consistency. For much of the 20th century, it was the coffee of choice for millions of Americans. Advertisements painted it as a reliable friend, a cup you could count on every single morning. Presidents even praised it, and its slogan became one of the most memorable in food history. But like many giants of its time, Maxwell House has stumbled in quality. Pour yourself a cup today, and it is often disappointing: thin, bland, and lacking in any real personality. What should be a smooth and satisfying finish is instead a sharp bitterness or a hollow flavor that leaves you reaching for more sugar and cream just to cover it up. For a brand that built its legacy on trust, it is a fall from grace that longtime fans have noticed. Part of the issue is the beans themselves. Much like Folgers, Maxwell House relies on cheaper blends of coffee that are mass-roasted and packaged for long shelf life. This means you are not getting beans that were roasted for flavor, but beans roasted for efficiency. The result is a cup that fills the mug, but not the senses. If coffee is supposed to be a small daily luxury, Maxwell House feels more like a chore. Price does play a role. Maxwell House is affordable and widely available, which explains why it still sells in massive numbers. For families on a budget, it may feel like a safe choice. But when compared to other supermarket options that offer better freshness and flavor for just a few dollars more, it begins to feel like you are paying for a name rather than a good cup of coffee. There is also the matter of how coffee culture has changed. In the 1960s or 1970s, when choices were limited, Maxwell House felt dependable. But in today's world of cold brews, espresso blends, and specialty roasters, it has been left behind. What was once a leader in the coffee aisle now struggles to feel relevant, especially among younger drinkers who expect more from their daily brew. Still, for some, Maxwell House holds a place of comfort. It may not be the most exciting coffee, but it is familiar, and sometimes familiarity is enough. But let us be honest, good to the last drop is a promise it rarely lives up to anymore. Do you think Maxwell House is still good to the last drop? Or has the slogan outlived the flavor? Coming up is the so-called bold brew that somehow manages to taste lifeless in every cup. Yuban Traditional Roast. Once upon a time, Yuban marketed itself as a higher quality option among the big supermarket brands. Ads claimed it was rich enough for royalty and promised a deeper, more satisfying taste. The packaging looked premium compared to its rivals, and for many shoppers, Yuban felt like an upgrade from Folgers or Maxwell House. But brew a pot today, and the disappointment is clear. Yuban Traditional Roast often lacks the richness it boasts about, leaving behind a cup that feels thin and unsatisfying. The flavor is muted, the aroma faint, and the overall experience is closer to drinking hot brown water than coffee. For a brand that leans so heavily on the idea of boldness, it delivers the exact opposite. One of the main issues is freshness. Like its competitors, Yuban relies on pre-ground coffee in large canisters that sit on supermarket shelves for weeks, sometimes months. By the time you buy it, the beans have already lost much of their natural oils and aromas. Instead of that full-bodied richness, you are left with something flat and stale. Coffee lovers who are used to freshly ground beans will immediately notice the difference. Price-wise, Yuban is often slightly more expensive than Folgers or Maxwell House, which only adds to the frustration. Paying more should mean getting more, but in this case, you are often paying for the illusion of quality rather than the real thing. Many drinkers find themselves wondering why they did not just buy something cheaper, since the flavor is not much better. There is also the problem of inconsistency. Some batches may come out slightly more flavorful, while others are so dull that even cream and sugar cannot save them. When you are buying coffee, you want to trust that each cup will be the same, and Yuban fails at that basic promise. Of course, there are people who swear by Yuban, often because it was the coffee their parents or grandparents drank. It still has pockets of loyal fans, especially in certain regions. But when compared side by side with other supermarket coffees, it is hard to argue that it stands out in any positive way. Yuban's story is one of faded potential. It marketed itself as a premium choice, but never delivered on that promise. Today, it is more of a reminder of how far supermarket coffee still has to go, rather than a brand worth celebrating. Have you ever tried Yuban Traditional Roast and thought it lived up to the word bold, or did it fall flat in your cup? Next on the chopping block is the classic New York can that delivers more tin than toast, chock full of nuts. This coffee has one of the most memorable names in the grocery aisle. It sounds bold, quirky, and unforgettable, and in a way, it is. Born in New York City in the 1930s, chock full of nuts was once sold in nut shops before switching to coffee during the Great Depression. Its golden can became a staple for city families and working folks who needed a pick-me-up without breaking the bank. The name stuck in people's minds, and for a while, the taste did too. But fast forward to today, and what you get in that golden can rarely matches the legend. The coffee often tastes metallic, thin, and just slightly burnt, like it picked up more of the can than the beans. Instead of a smooth, rich flavor, many cups lean toward bitter, with an aftertaste that lingers longer than you would want. For a brand that markets itself on nostalgia, the flavor feels more like a time capsule, and not in a good way. The problem starts with the beans. Like many mass-market coffees, chock full of nuts uses lower-grade beans roasted in bulk, with little attention to nuance. That means no natural sweetness, no complexity, and no satisfying depth. Add in the fact that it is pre-ground and sealed in a can that can sit on the shelf for months, and you are left with a brew that tastes tired before you even open it. Price-wise, it is usually in the same range as Folgers or Maxwell House. That might tempt shoppers into thinking it is a safe, affordable bet. But the lack of freshness makes it hard to justify, especially when there are other supermarket options that deliver more for the same price. Still, chock full of nuts has a loyal fan base. For many, it is tied to the smell of their parents' or grandparents' kitchens, or the image of New York City mornings decades ago. The nostalgia is powerful, and sometimes that is enough to keep the can in the cupboard. But if you are judging by flavor alone, this coffee struggles to stand tall. In the end, chock full of nuts is more of a memory than a masterpiece. It has history, personality, and a great name, but the taste no longer lives up to its reputation. It is a brand you might buy once for the story, but not one you will crave again for the flavor. Do you think chock full of nuts still has the charm of old New York, or is it just a relic of coffee history? Rolling into the lineup is the budget-friendly bag that loses its freshness faster than you can finish the box, 8 o'clock coffee, pre-ground bags. 8 o'clock coffee has been around since the 1850s, making it one of the oldest names in the American coffee game. For years, it was the coffee people trusted when they wanted something affordable but reliable. Walk into any grocery store and you would see those bright red bags lined up neatly, promising a decent cup at a price almost anyone could afford. But the key word there is decent. 8 o'clock coffee works best when you buy whole beans and grind them fresh at home. The pre-ground bags, on the other hand, lose their punch almost as soon as they are opened. Coffee is fragile. Once ground, it starts losing aroma and flavor within days. With 8 o'clock, by the time you are halfway through the bag, the coffee tastes flat, stale, and almost lifeless. The flavor profile itself is mild, which some people like, but mild can easily turn into bland, especially when freshness is gone. Instead of a rich, aromatic morning cup, you often end up with something that feels like it has been watered down before you even added cream. It is not offensive, just forgettable. And forgettable is not what you want from your daily coffee. Price is where 8 o'clock keeps its edge. It is affordable, usually cheaper than fancier supermarket brands, which explains its long-standing popularity. For students, young families, or anyone on a budget, it seems like a fair choice. But when you compare it to something only a couple of dollars more, the difference in flavor is clear. Nostalgia also plays a role here. 8 o'clock has been around so long that many families grew up with it. Some still remember the old grinders in grocery stores where you could buy a bag and grind it yourself on the spot. But those days are gone, and with them, much of the appeal. 8 o'clock coffee is not the worst choice you could make, but it is far from the best. If you love the brand, stick to the whole beans and skip the pre-ground bags. Otherwise, you will find yourself drinking a cup that tastes like it gave up before you even brewed it. Would you stick with 8 o'clock coffee for the savings, or pay a little more for something fresher and fuller?
Marching in with a price tag that looks appealing but a flavor that falls flat is Great Value Store Brand Coffee, Walmart. Great Value is Walmart's in-house brand, and like the name suggests, it is all about budget. You walk into the store, see that familiar blue and white label, and the price tag makes you pause. A big tub of coffee for less than the cost of a couple of lattes? It feels like a win. Until you actually brew it. The first thing you notice is the smell, or rather the lack of it. Coffee should fill the kitchen with a warm, rich aroma that makes you excited for the first sip. Great Value coffee, on the other hand, barely registers. Brew a pot and what you get is thin, acidic, and often sour, with an aftertaste that lingers in a way you wish it did not. Instead of waking you up, it leaves you reaching for something else to cover the taste. Part of the issue is quality. Store brands often use the lowest grade beans they can find to keep costs down, and it shows. The roast is inconsistent, the grind uneven, and the flavor flat. Coffee is one of those things where cutting corners is obvious, and here it is impossible to miss. To be fair, the price is the selling point. For people who drink multiple cups a day and just want caffeine, Great Value might get the job done. But drinking coffee should not feel like settling, and this brand makes it clear you are compromising flavor for cost. Nostalgia or loyalty does not really apply here. No one has fond family stories about Great Value coffee. It is purely a product of convenience, and that is why it rarely makes the cut for people who truly care about their morning ritual. In the end, Great Value is exactly what it says, value. You get lots of coffee for very little money. But if your mornings matter, if you want that first sip to feel like a small luxury, this is one corner worth skipping. Would you ever trade flavor for savings when it comes to coffee? Or is a good cup worth the extra dollars every time? And here's the regional favorite that loses all its charm once it's sealed into plastic pods. Community Coffee House Blend K-Cups. Community Coffee has deep roots in the American South. For generations, it has been the brand that families in Louisiana and beyond relied on to start their mornings. The red bags lined grocery store shelves. The rich smell filled countless kitchens, and it carried a reputation for being hearty, flavorful, and comforting. But the trouble begins when you swap the traditional bag for a box of K-Cups. Suddenly, that full-bodied Southern charm gets watered down into something that barely resembles the original. The K-Cups are convenient, no doubt, but they sacrifice too much along the way. The flavor becomes weak, sometimes sour, and often leaves behind an aftertaste that reminds you more of plastic than beans. What once felt like a proud family tradition now feels like a shortcut that missed the point. Part of the problem lies in the brewing process. K-Cups do not allow for the same kind of extraction you get from a pot or a French press. The water pushes through too quickly, which leaves you with coffee that tastes underdeveloped and flat. Combine that with the fact that the coffee inside the pods is pre-ground and loses freshness quickly, and the end result is more disappointing than satisfying. Price adds another layer of frustration. You pay more per cup for K-Cups than you do for a traditional bag of ground or whole beans, but the flavor is worse.
It is convenience at the cost of quality. And for coffee drinkers who grew up with Community Coffee's rich taste, the difference is hard to ignore. To be fair, the brand itself still shines in bagged or whole bean form. Brew it properly, and Community Coffee can still deliver a solid, flavorful cup. But when it comes to the K-Cups, it feels like the soul has been drained out of the blend. Community Coffee K-Cups are a reminder that convenience is not always worth it. Sometimes the few extra minutes it takes to brew a pot are what make the coffee worth drinking in the first place. Do you think the trade-off of K-Cup convenience is worth it, or does it ruin the spirit of a good regional coffee?
On the brighter side, few supermarket blends feel as rich and complex in your morning mug as Peet's Major Dickinson's blend. Peet's has a reputation for being bold. Founded in Berkeley, California in the 1960s, it quickly became known as the darker, richer alternative to the lighter supermarket coffees of its time. Major Dickinson's blend in particular has become the brand's signature, loved for its depth, consistency, and ability to stand up to cream and sugar without losing its character. Pour yourself a cup, and the difference is obvious. The aroma is stronger, the taste smoother, and the finish leaves you wanting another sip instead of reaching for something to cover the bitterness. Unlike the flat flavors of Folgers or Maxwell House, Peet's offers layers, hints of chocolate, a slight smokiness, and a fullness that feels satisfying even before breakfast is on the table. It feels like a step up from ordinary supermarket coffee without requiring the budget of a specialty cafe. What makes Peet's stand out is the attention to roasting. They focus on darker roasts that bring out bold flavors, and they roast in smaller batches compared to the giants of the coffee aisle. This keeps the freshness and intensity intact, which explains why so many coffee drinkers find it superior. Even after sitting in your pantry for a bit, it still manages to deliver more complexity than the cheaper brands. Price-wise, it does cost more than the bargain coffees, but not so much that it feels out of reach. For what you get, a richer, more reliable cup, the value is clear. Seniors who grew up with simpler supermarket brands often find Peet's to be a welcome upgrade that still feels accessible. It is the kind of coffee you can enjoy daily without guilt, but still appreciate like a small luxury. Major Dickinson's blend proves that supermarket coffee does not have to be stale or flavorless. It shows that with the right beans and roasting process, you can get cafe-level satisfaction from a bag at your local store. Have you tried Peet's Major Dickinson's blend? And if so, do you think it beats every other supermarket brand? And finally, let's celebrate the Italian import that brings smooth, cafe-level flavor straight from the grocery shelf, Lavazza Espresso Italiano. Lavazza is one of the oldest coffee roasters in Italy, and for decades it has been a symbol of what good espresso should taste like. Unlike many American supermarket brands, Lavazza puts the focus on quality beans and traditional roasting methods that highlight smoothness and aroma. The result is a coffee that feels refined without being pretentious. Brew a cup of Lavazza Espresso Italiano, and the first thing you notice is the aroma: sweet, nutty, and slightly floral. The taste is balanced and smooth, without the bitterness that haunts so many supermarket coffees. Whether you make it in an espresso machine, a mocha pot, or even a drip brewer, it delivers a cup that feels like it belongs in a cafe, not just in your kitchen. Part of what makes Lavazza special is its versatility. Unlike brands that taste good only in one style, Lavazza shines across brewing methods. Want a straight espresso shot? It works beautifully. Prefer a cappuccino or latte? The smooth flavor blends perfectly with milk, creating that cafe experience at home. It is a brand that respects coffee as more than just fuel. It treats it as something to be enjoyed. Of course, it costs a bit more than the basic supermarket cans, but it does not reach the luxury prices of specialty roasters. For many, that makes it the perfect middle ground. Affordable enough for daily use, but high quality enough to feel like a treat. It is especially popular among shoppers who want to escape the bitterness of Folgers or Maxwell House, but do not want to spend a fortune. Lavazza Espresso Italiano is proof that you do not need to settle for bland coffee at home. With one bag, you can elevate your mornings and enjoy a taste of Italy without leaving your kitchen. Do you think Lavazza deserves a permanent spot in your pantry, or do you save it only for special mornings?
And that wraps up our coffee journey. Now, spill the beans in the comments with your best or worst cup. Give this video a like if you have ever been let down by a supermarket brew, and subscribe to the hidden menu so you never miss our next pour.
And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.